Trina Madewell.
Well, good morning and welcome. You're listening to Tampa Home Talk, and we are live this morning. And welcome to our show. We got another exciting show lined up for you actually this morning. And I think one of our guests that was actually scheduled for the show is supposed to be calling in today because he is actually stuck in the Carolinas. Pat George might remember him. Do you remember Mr. Tom Hall from H&H Environmental?
I do. What is he, stuck on the roof of a car or up in an attic?
Well, if you remember, he is one of the arborists that we recommend. And
so he's stuck up in a tree.
He's stuck, either on a tree, under a tree. Not really sure which tree. But anyway, it's now I guess they're dealing with surging waters. Did you hear all that on the news?
Oh, that's all you see everywhere. You tweet and you see the Twitter feeds and you see Facebook with all of the rescues that are going on, and the water apparently just keeps going up.
I know. So anyway, he was supposed to be here, but he is still there. And he was talking about how wild it is to basically be going back and forth like 90 miles apart. He's zigzagging all over the Carolinas.
And a lot of those roads you aren't able to zigzag.
I wouldn't know that, but you probably would.
No, it's all over. When you do traffic and you know about roadways, some of the interstates and main arteries are still shut down. They need people like home inspectors. If I was a home inspector, I'm not going to mention any certain names, but if I was a home inspector, I'd be up there in about 6 months making a fortune.
So Pat George is talking about, of course, Leo Cannyn with Beryl Engineering and Inspections. He is our preferred home show partner for Tampa Home Talk and for our home inspections, but you guys are an engineer by trade.
Yeah, we've done a lot of hurricane restoration work. My last storm I actually did was Hurricane Ike. That was 9 months of working 16-hour days, 9 months straight, 7 days a week. So my hurricane days are a little bit behind me, but I do enjoy watching a good storm.
And, I think as you grow, perhaps maybe that will be on your radar, right? But
well, actually, we're still dealing with the fallout from Hurricane Irma.
Are you?
Last year. We're still dealing with insurance claims that are being denied. We're still dealing with, just roofs that still have tarps on them. I haven't seen a carnage like this since Hurricanes 2004 to 2006, which ended in Wilma.
It's interesting you say hurricane claims that are being denied, because that is exactly what our guest in the studio today is talking about. And that's a perfect segue to Mrs. Erin Dunavant. She is with Merlin Law Group, no stranger to Tampa Home Talk. Welcome back.
Thank you so much for having me this morning, Katrina and Leo. It's very interesting right now because we are still seeing the effects of Irma. We are still having denied claims come through our doors.
It's interesting you say that because, people like me, like I saw that lull after the hurricane ran through. And then basically it's like it took a while for everybody to get back to work and get back in the groove. And now that they are, you think, it's as normal. But you guys see so much of that aftermath.
We do, and not only were a lot of claims denied, some are still pending. There are still claims out there that are taking a long time to investigate, and I think that's another big problem that homeowners and business owners are seeing.
How many months is that claim?
Now we're looking at a year because Irma was last September, and so now it's a year and 10 days later, and we have claims that are undervalued, claims that are denied, claims where there's still decisions pending, and some in litigation. So we really see the whole gamut. And now, look what's happening. Florence came to North Carolina, and hurricane season has started again. So we will be a busy bunch over at Merlin Law Group, making sure that homeowners, business owners, and condo and HOA associations are getting what's owed to them through their insurance companies.
So I'm curious, Erin, what are these people that are, dealing with this pending claim? I don't know how big the claim is. I would imagine it's significant enough to maybe not even live in their home. Is that fair to say?
Some are not able to live in their home, and we're going to see a lot of that. We saw a lot of that with Hurricane Harvey, and Merlin Law Group does have an office in Texas. We're seeing a lot of that with Florence because flooding can just ruin a home.
So what happens to these guys? What are they doing when their home is not able to live in? And how does that tie into insurance?
Well, what you should do, and what I encourage all homeowners to do, is try to make sure before the storm comes through that their insurance policy covers ALE. What's
ALE?
That's additional living expenses.
Okay.
So that covers them in the event that they need to go and stay at a hotel or what have you. If
you're fighting with the insurance company, is it fair to say that they're paying that out of pocket at this point until you can get that reimbursed or paid properly?
It is. It's an unfortunate situation for many homeowners. They have to come out of pocket and pay for that, or they have to stay on family members' couches, We saw a lot of that, especially with Hurricane Harvey, because Harvey hit people that weren't in flood zones, flooded people that weren't normally in flood zones. So there's a lot of just turmoil that happens after the storm, especially for people whose claims are denied, and even for people whose claims maybe aren't denied, but who are being delayed. So if you don't have a decision yet, what are you supposed to do?
And I guess it's fair to say there's no regulation on that. Like, insurance companies are not regulated. They have to get through that in a certain period of time and settle that claim with the homeowner.
Well, they are supposed to make a claim decision within 90 days. There's certain exceptions to that, like if they let the homeowner or business owner know that they're still deciding the claim or that they need more information. Sometimes the insurance companies will make excuses, or sometimes they have a valid reason for continuing to investigate. But we do have to. We do have 90 days under the statute for them to make a claims decision typically, but there are some.
But you're talking about over a year.
And many of these claims are still pending over a year, and many of them are denied. Some of them are undervalued, and some are just, there's some funky thing going on to where there's a battle of engineers or battle of experts, or they're having it looked at by a second engineer, and there's just issues causing the claim decision to delay.
How does the, I heard something like a civil remedy notice or a CRN. How does that fit into the process of getting the insurance companies to?
What is that before you have her answer that?
Sure. These are both great questions, y'all. The civil remedy notice is a form you can fill out. I recommend getting an attorney to help you, but you can technically do it yourself. It's a form you fill out. It puts the state of Florida's financial office on notice.
That's such an attorney term.
I know. Such an attorney term. But anyway, it puts the Florida's financial office on notice that the insurance company has acted in violation of what may be bad faith statutes. And so if they deny your claim, they don't decide it on time, they undervalue it exponentially, they do something funky in the investigation phase, like don't send an adjuster out on time, or don't get it evaluated by an engineer, or some other facet of the statute that they're supposed to follow with regards to investigation of claims, or some other mishap that they do that's not in compliance with your policy, you can file that civil remedy notice with the state of Florida, allege all of the different things in your civil remedy notice, make sure you're specific about your facts.
Let me ask you a question before you get too far down the road.
Sure.
How would somebody like you help or be better in the process as an attorney that knows what that form is and knows what goes into that? How would you be better to help somebody, and you do this all the time at Merlin Law Group, how would you help them fill this out, complete it, that might be different than the way that they would do it themselves, right? Because you don't know what you don't know. And I would venture to say it's pretty fair to say a lot of people that have these major claims have possibly never had a claim before, or possibly never dealt with this before.
That's true. And one of the things that our law office can provide, and really any attorney that represents insureds can do, is we know the bad faith statutes. We're familiar with the investigation procedures that insurance companies are supposed to follow.
Do you know what that time, because I wanted to ask you this before, what is the timeline that they have to get somebody out there after they've told the insurance company that they're looking to make a claim?
They are supposed to start the process as soon as possible. Now, it's typically within 30 days. They have 90 days to make the claim decision. So it's within that window, they should probably send somebody out. However, because everybody was so overwhelmed with Irma, this was violated exponentially worse than I've probably seen it since Leo was mentioning in the 2004 to 2006 range when we got hit with all those storms. So everyone was kind of stretched too thin. We saw other violations of the statute where out-of-state adjusters were coming in and adjusting claims, which you're really supposed to get permission to do from the state of Florida. That we saw a little bit of that. We saw a bunch of different issues, but the importance of the civil remedy notice is it holds the insurance company accountable. They have 90 days to either cure their violation or respond.
And so, I would imagine when they see that notice filed, because they get notice, right? They're put on alert that was filed. If the state's involved, they're probably going to be a little bit more proactive in that particular claim.
It can definitely help get their attention. That's what we want.
Definitely. All right, so we've got some great stuff coming up today on our topic before the storm. So this is stuff that you should know before a storm actually rolls into our area again, like Irma did last year. So don't be one of these families that is stuck and still hanging around a year later trying to get your claim paid. When we come back, maybe we can elaborate just a little bit on some stuff that they can look for in their policy before the storm occurs. Fair enough? Can you help them look for some of those things?
Definitely.
Because I'm sure it's the first thing you guys have to look at, right, as an attorney.
It is.
All right, stick around. Leo Cannyn and I will be back with Aaron Donovan of Merlin Law Group right after this break. Stick around. We'll be back in a minute. Welcome back. You're listening to Tampa Home Talk. I'm your host, Katrina Madewell, with Leo Cannyn of Beryl Engineering and Inspections. Welcome back to the show. We also have Aaron Donovan with Merlin Law Group rejoining us today here in the studio. Thanks for coming back. We're glad to have you here.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
You missed the first part of the show. We were talking all about, some of these pending claims from Irma that are still hanging out there, plus a year later. And essentially, all the things that we should be looking for really before that claim comes through, right? Things to look at in your policy before you actually make the claim. Go back to what you said during the break, because I swear we've said this 1,000 times, right, Leo? Some of the best conversations actually happen off air.
Yeah, but all our off air conversations today was positioning us so we look better on the camera.
Yeah, there you go. All right, so you mentioned Citizens during the break. Can you talk more about that, just so the person that has Citizens can know about this? Recap what we talked about and what you said.
Absolutely. So one of the issues that comes up with Citizens is the state-run insurer of last resort. And so they're not liable for bad faith. Now, this is not lacking the efforts of, our law firm, the Florida Justice Association, and certain lobbies on behalf of
pool, right? So they just made themselves exempt?
Exactly. We've tried to fight that through the legislature unsuccessfully, but they are not liable for bad faith. So one of the issues that we see with Citizens is that sometimes we will see a further delay with those claims because they're not held to the tight standard that the other privately owned carriers and
I have to tell you,
owned carriers
I never made an insurance claim, but back in the heyday when all the insurance companies were pulling out of Florida, right, and there wasn't a lot of options left, my policy at the time was still one of the very few remaining with State Farm. And so I talked to my agent. I know how some of that stuff works, and I knew that they were just going to write it through Citizens. And I'm like, no. Well, at the time, that's all I could get was Citizens because I was in Pasco. So I had Citizens at the time. I don't now, thank goodness. But I had them at the time, and we actually did have a huge hailstorm come through. And I had these huge, literally quarter golf ball size holes, perfectly symmetrical holes in the top of my birdcage pool screen. So it was evident it was from hail. Like, how else would you get those holes at the top of your birdcage? But Citizens didn't pay it.
Well, I've seen that before. Wouldn't be telling you the truth if I said I hadn't seen that before, having represented many a policyholder against Citizens. So that's definitely something to look for. And then as far as you asked me about what do I need to look for before a storm comes through? Well, we talked a little bit about your insurance policy and making sure that you have ALE. Again, that's additional living expense coverage.
Where would somebody find that on their policy? Do you know?
It's in a rider. It'll be under the additional coverages usually. Sometimes we see them under an additional rider, but it's important to have that in case you have to leave your home for a little bit. It's also important to make sure that you have, wind, hail, hurricane coverage. Most HO3 policies do. And those are some things you definitely want to look at. You also want to know where your policy is. I know it sounds strange, but
why would you need to know? Why couldn't you just call your agent? That's what I would do.
Well, you could call your agent, and that's the alternative. If you're not someone that's good at keeping your papers in order, definitely have your agent's number in your cell phone. Have somebody from your insurance company, because you're going to want to report that claim. If we sold you the home,
you can call us, because we keep amazing digital records, and we will know right away who your insurance carrier is and who your agent is, and we'll be happy to connect you with them.
Exactly. So, no, it's very important to know those things, and I can't stress enough how important it's also is to make a claim timely. And the reason that it's so important is because you don't want.
So what's timely? What's timely?
Timely is within a reasonable time,
which is not anything clear cut.
It's not anything clear cut. It definitely is fact intense. Typically, you could probably get away with a year or two under Florida case law, but I would never wait that long. And here's why. The insurance company, you don't want them to come back and say that they were prejudiced in the investigation of the loss. So I would highly recommend reporting it to your insurance company as soon as you know that there's been damage to your home. And that is sometimes a problem for people who had to evacuate. I know with Irma victims went up to Georgia, they went up to North Carolina, they stayed with family north of them. By the time they came back, they're so worried about mitigating their damages, tarping their roofs, calling contractors and trying to kind of stop the bleeding.
They're trying to fix it. Yeah, which was what human nature would tell you to do.
Right. But we have seen some insurance carriers come back and tell those poor evacuated victims, oh, you didn't report it timely because they were taking care of A, B, and C first. A little bit unfortunate, especially considering that those same policies require for these homeowners to mitigate their damages under the policies.
Which means stop the bleeding, right?
Exactly. So we try to defend homeowners in the late notice situations, but again, better to play it safe and report it as soon as you humanly can.
Well, the other thing we're seeing, especially with tile roofs, is your tiles can be blown off and they can slip out of place, and it can take that membrane 90 days to actually deteriorate. So what ends up happening on a tile roof claim is we enter the dry season, and then it's not until April or May when the rainy season picks back up that all these roof leaks on a tile roof with obsolete tiles are actually manifesting themselves from Irma.
So this would be a great example earlier when you said it could possibly be a year. This would be a great example if you have a storm roll in late summer going into fall. Mm-hmm. You have one of those tile roofs, exactly what Leo just mentioned, and now it's April. We still don't have any major storms, but now we're back in storm season again, right? With a ton of rain. So that might be for the first time ever when you see it. Because let's face it, how many people other than you, maybe Leo, actually crawl up in their attic and look around at stuff? I don't. Do you?
Do it once every 6 months.
Do you do that, Aaron? Does your husband crawl up in your attic?
I got to be honest with you. We don't crawl up in our attic or crawl space at my house.
Exactly. And I would venture to say the person listening, same thing. So it makes sense that they would have a year.
Every 6 months, twice during hurricane season.
So here's the thing that I want to just elaborate on, and this is where you don't know what you don't know, right? So when you hire a professional like me to lead you, guide you, and protect you through a real estate contract, we're going to know all those what's next, what if type scenarios. I had one last night where that same one, Leo, that I was asking about with regards to the roof. Well, we layered in there an we layered in there an appraisal contingency addendum, which means it has to appraise. Well, we went back and renegotiated on price because the house needs a new roof, right? You guys did that inspection. So you know that roof was jacked. It needed to be replaced. And so they agreed to go up on the price a little bit, definitely by no means the full cost of a roof. But she tried to text me late last night and say, oh, that original appraisal contingency still stands. And I'm like, no. Like, I didn't even talk to my client yet. I'm like, no, it doesn't. And so I called my buyer and I said, look, we got to talk about this a little bit because this is not only the upper end of your range, but this is the upper end of where this thing is going to appraise. And you already told me you're not buying this house without a new roof, and I don't blame you. But we need to increase this contingency for the appraisal as well, which was done this morning at 9 a.m. while we're here in the studio. That's happening. And if that doesn't happen, you got to be ready, willing, and able to walk away. Do you want to do that, right? Because I always want to leave that decision up to them. And they said yes. And I said, good, because I kind of feel like the seller, which is also an agent, by the way, is bullying you, and I don't like it. It's kind of like pushed me a little bit too far. So for me, like a buyer walking into that situation where the seller is an agent, right? It was disclosed, but they're a real estate agent. That's kind of like going to a dogfight or showing up in court with an attorney on the other side representing themselves. Even if they're not representing themselves, right? And they have another attorney, they're going to know the rules way better than you will. So it's a total unfair advantage.
And we see a lot of that. I mean, unfortunately, a lot of claims get denied and they shouldn't have been denied. I see the storm-created opening denials all the time with water rushing into people's homes. It's absolutely ridiculous. I'm representing people all over the state on these Irma claims, and it's just I'm seeing boilerplate denials from several different carriers on this storm-created opening issue, and it's just it's worse than I've seen, and it's a bad situation for a lot of homeowners out there. So I encourage you to get a second opinion. Even if you're not comfortable hiring an attorney, have a contractor friend come look. Have an engineer like Leo or one of his folks go look. It doesn't hurt to get a second pair of eyes on it because you are paying your premiums for insurance. You are paying that. So why aren't you getting the benefits of paying those premiums? So again, like I said, if you're not comfortable with hiring an attorney or getting someone to look at it on that end, have another pair of eyes on it. It never hurts.
And not necessarily your neighbor that's had a few beers, like somebody knows what they're doing, like Leo.
What if their neighbor who has a few beers is Leo?
Well, then Leo shouldn't be doing it that time. Send one of your other inspectors.
Don't send Leo on the roof after a few beers.
No, Leo's smart enough to know to not go on the roof after a few beers.
No, that's with all those 70s and 80s sitcoms where the children, the teenagers are drinking beers, smoking whatever, sitting on the roof.
I think Roseanne, they did it on there too.
See?
Well, all good things come to an end is all I'm going to say. And we are halfway through Tampa Home Talk. We'll be back in a minute after this break. And when we come back, let's dive into a little bit more. And, real quick, tagging on that last point, because I will forget by the time we come back, we tell our sellers all the time, get a pre-listing inspection. This is a prime example why it makes total sense to get a pre-listing inspection. Don't wait for a buyer, especially in this market that's dropping, to go under contract for a home price that you are not going to get again with the next buyer. Get those issues figured out before that buyer does. Fix it, remedy it, so they go into a nice home without a completely jacked roof, right? That might have scared a lot of buyers off. But
how did they call you for that?
How did they call who?
You.
Well, they can call me at our off-air number. It's 813-377-2775, 813-377-2775. We'll be back in a minute. Welcome back. This is Tampa Home Talk. I'm your host, Katrina Madewell. Leo Cannyn with Beryl Engineering and Inspection joining us here for Before the Storm, and also Aaron Donovan with Merlin Law Group. And we're talking all about some of the things you need to know before the storm. All I can say is, wow, this last conversation that we had off air. Can we recreate that?
I just love our off air conversations where I'm not positioning us around to be on the microphones.
So I was joking around with Leo saying you never realized that science project that your teachers made you do in school would help you in your real adult life. Talk about some of the studies that you're doing and how you're winning some lawsuits for homeowners with this information.
We've done 2 studies. The first one is a moisture intrusion study where we take drywall and we basically soak it in water for 14 days. And we actually show the amount of decay over the 14-day period, which happens to be the same amount of decay that the insurance company experts say takes 6 to 8 months to manifest. So by saying we can get this in 14 days, their experts never get out there that fast. So it completely destroys their experts' argument, because if this happens in 14 days and they're saying it's 6 months and it took them a month to get out there, this damage could, and I'm not a lawyer, but they love this, could this damage have been from this? And the lawyers all light up.
Aaron is. She can comment on that.
Experts all get sad.
Bam, drop the mic.
I can't. It's too expensive.
Yeah, right. Yeah, well, Beasley wouldn't like that.
And by the experts getting all sad, he means the insurance company's experts. And that's very helpful for homeowners, because that's what it takes sometimes to fight these claims, is a competing engineer, which again is an expense to the homeowner. Homeowners shouldn't have to retain someone like me who has to incur costs of an engineer and everything like that in order to fight their storm claim. But unfortunately, because in my personal view, Irma was mishandled because there was so much at once, so many claims, and everybody was overwhelmed, we're seeing a lot of this. And so if Mr. Cannyn and his team can come in and find a way to, I called you by your surname there. He feels all special.
I feel like I'm on the stand now.
If he can come in and help homeowners fight these, that's a good thing for policyholders. And again, I can't encourage you enough to get a second pair of eyes to look at your claim if you think something funky's gone on, or even if you're not sure.
All right, so Aaron, let me ask you the $1 million question next, because I'm sure the person listening wants to know exactly what I'm going to ask you. But I think it's fair to say that people are sometimes afraid of attorneys. They're scared to call you guys. They think you're somewhat like real estate agents, right? That bad rap that a lot of those, the guys I have to work with in the field every day actually do. We're not all created alike. We're not all equal. And I would say the same is true for attorneys, right? But So I think people sometimes avoid calling attorneys when really they should. So the question I want to ask you is, how do you guys get paid? And does the homeowner have to pay you money to retain you to do this? How would it work in this particular situation? Do they get a no-cost consultation so they can kind of figure out what's going on and pick your brain? How does that work?
Well, absolutely. Many of us that represent policyholders and insureds work on a pure contingency fee basis. So that means we take a percentage of what we get from the insurance company. The other beauty of Florida is there's an attorney fee statute. It's called 627428. And us that represent insureds, I know, right? Us that represent insureds love the attorney fee statute, because what that means for you is once you get into a lawsuit, your insurance company has exposure to pay our fees in the end if we win at a trial or
prevailing party gets
judgment.
fees and costs, like in our contracts.
So that's very helpful to homeowners and to insureds and to businesses.
So that means it doesn't actually come. You're working 100% on contingency, which means only if you win do you get paid. And on top of that, the insurance company is now going to have to pay your fees, which means it won't come out of the bottom line to actually fix their home. Is that right?
Well, many a times that we can settle before suit, and we just try to make sure we get enough to make everybody happy, because there are risks and such associated with going to trial and going before the judge. But we try to make it work for everybody, and we don't typically settle a case unless the insureds. Well, we can't settle a case unless the insureds are on board, and that's how it works.
How does a public adjuster fit into all this?
Oh, good question, Leo.
That is a good question, Leo. They typically take a percent too. They are, I think, maxed by Florida statute at 20% is the max a public adjuster can take. I see a lot of contracts for 10 and 15% from public adjusters. But
does it make sense to have them, or should you bypass them and get an attorney?
It depends on the situation. Public adjusters can be very helpful because they are advocates for homeowners. They have good relationships with contractors. They can be very helpful. Sometimes an attorney is best on a very tough case or on a full-on denial. So really it depends on your set of facts. But again, I always encourage homeowners, business owners, commercial property owners, HOAs, condo associations to get a second pair of eyes to look at stuff, because insurance companies will deny claims to make their bottom lines. That's the bottom line. I mean, not to make a play on words.
Well, they're not a non-for-profit. They are a profit-driven organization. And, like any other business, you have to make a profit to remain open and keep your doors open. And you really want your insurance company to be profitable, because if they're not, they won't have the money to pay a claim.
So on these larger ones, I guess the perfect team would be an engineer, a general contractor, a public adjuster, and a lawyer?
That's a lot of our claims have all of those. That is true, especially I represent condo associations and large, I have one that's 40 buildings right now. And the more people that you can get on your team, because the insurance company has their giant team, the better. And I'm not saying that there's no legitimate denials out there. That's not what I'm saying at all, folks. But what I am saying is there's probably more claims denied than should be legitimately denied.
Fair enough. Absolutely.
Well, I'm seeing more on our end. It's not just that they're denying it, they're just undervaluing it. It's like they call for a replacement of 3 square feet of drywall when the whole room got soaked. And they're not acknowledging the flooring is warping. And they're saying the flooring warping is from a bathroom. The bathroom's nowhere near that. The roof leaks directly above it.
Well, and undervaluing is a huge problem as well. And it becomes a huge problem when the undervalue happens to be less than the policyholder's deductible. So I've been seeing that a lot. In fact, I'm representing someone with a commercial strip right now where they're not paying above his deductible, and he has water rushing into his building.
What?
So it's a really sad situation.
How's that even possible?
We're seeing a lot of difficult claims right now. And so some of those will go to what's called an appraisal. An appraisal is a fight over the amount of loss. So sometimes on the undervalued claims, you'll see those go to appraisal. The insurance company has their appraiser. The insured has their appraiser, and then it goes to an umpire. The umpire's decision is typically binding absent fraud, coercion, or some mistake.
Right. You got to have that middle ground. It makes total sense.
Right. And we do claims that go to appraisal. I have one that's in appraisal right now. I help the insured pick their appraiser. I usually use someone that I know has an excellent background in contracting, construction, and adjusting. And that's a benefit we can provide to insureds if their insurance company demands appraisal and they don't know what to do. Again, we do provide an initial consult for at no charge, or we can be retained outright to help handle the appraisal and pick a good appraiser.
And you can text us, Aaron, at 813-377-2775. We'll get you or your loved one connected if you got some questions that you would like to ask Aaron directly.
Absolutely.
Just call or text us at 813 813-377-2775. You know, I have a thought, and one of my passions is to help people really build wealth through real estate. And so one of the things we've been talking about is, as opposed to doing the traditional cycle, right, that we see people doing, is they buy their first-time home, first-time home buyer, entry-level home, then they buy their move-up home. Sometimes they go to a trophy home, and then after they buy their trophy home, they downsize, right, or empty nest.
I have seen that.
So that's the real estate pattern, right, for many families that we see. They buy 4 properties in their lifetime. And so one of our thoughts is, well, what if we could help you build wealth through real estate? And what if we could help you become a millionaire by the time you retire by just in what you own in real estate, outside of what you own otherwise? So I would encourage you, and I talked about the traditional cycle, but what happens if someone has this case where they in fact have to leave, their home? What if you bought a small little place to live in temporarily, as opposed to renting or staying in a hotel, and then when your house is restored, you could rent that out and make that part of your long-term retirement plan? Does anybody ever think about that? They're probably not thinking about that with all the mayhem, right?
Well, it's actually an excellent thought, and it just, I don't know if it just popped into your head or if you thought about that before, but it's a really interesting concept. And I think
it all just pops into my head. You can ask Leo. It's all very random.
Well, where are show notes?
Well, one of the interesting,
we actually don't have any today.
We don't. We were just winging it. But one of the interesting things that I would think you might be able to, it might be a stretch, but if you could apply your additional living expenses coverage to part of that.
I don't know. You're the attorney. You asked me, could you?
So I would think so. I mean, especially if you really downsized, you might be able to at least apply it towards. Typically, an additional living expense coverage won't be enough to actually purchase a second home, but you definitely.
But that's not the point, right? Because the point is, like, we're a family of 5 with dogs. Like, if that happened to us in an extended living, first of all, we have a Roddy, so like that's not going to happen. No hotel is going to take us, so we really are going to have to live with family or buy another property.
Yeah, no, you for a situation like you, it'd be very difficult to try to hotel it for a few weeks while you guys are figuring everything out. And we see a lot of issues with that. And like I said,
my little Yorkie alone would drive people nuts to where we would get kicked out. No lie.
So the Yorkie and not even the Rot is the problem.
He's totally the problem. He's the bully.
Can the Yorkie ride the Rottweiler like it's like a knight going into battle? Like an insurance rider. He can be an insurance rider.
He grabs her ears and yanks and like all this crazy stuff. But, but so that's a thought, and I'm sure people are not thinking about that right in the middle of that. But what if they had the capacity and the means to do that, right? Just to buy a small little place when it becomes a rental or an Airbnb or whatever they want to do when their home is restored.
It's definitely a creative thought and probably a good one. I mean, look at the people in Key West. A lot of people lost their homes in Key West, and if they had the financial means to do so, they could just, like you said, go alter what their real estate cycle would normally be.
Yes.
Just because of the circumstances. So, it's a good thought.
One of our Facebook Live people, which also happens to be a past client, is commenting on that. He's like, yep, I have. Good idea. Yep, as part of my retirement planning. Definitely right on point. Thank you for that, Michael. Because, I'm always thinking about that, and it's... I have another idea, Leo, for a whole show that would be really good, like nationally syndicated. Ooh. Tampa Home Talk, not so much, right? Because we're very hyper local. There's some things we talk about that could be syndicated.
We could be nationally syndicated. I mean, we're all over the world right now with our video streams.
But one of the ideas I have for another show, and I'm not going to spill the beans yet, really would be the perfect topic for a nationally syndicated show. And this whole topic that I talked about would fit in nicely.
Why would you spill the beans? They're like a very dense form of protein, unsullied by flavor.
Only an engineer would answer my analogy like that. I mean, come on, really?
Oh my goodness!
It's also a food source you can have for a hurricane. I mean, why would you spill them?
Dave Ramsey preaches
Stock
rice
up
and
on beans in case we get hit again, guys.
And it's a built-in source of heat.
You're listening to Tampa Home Talk. We have so much fun with you guys every single week. We get excellent feedback on the show. We really appreciate you guys listening. We love each and every one of you. If you ever want to connect with me, I'm a real person. You can call me. I will answer. Our off-air number to get to connect with me is 813-377-2775. 813-377-2775. It's funny, Leo, when I call people after they respond, they're like, is this you? And then they recognize my voice. And you're like, yeah, it is. Okay. All right, we'll be back in a minute. Welcome back. This is Tampa Home Talk. I'm your host, Katrina Madewell, with Leo Cannyn of Beryl Engineering and Inspections and Aaron Donovan with Merlin Law Group. And if you're just now chiming into the show, we're going to have excellent video feed for you. Thank you to Leo Cannyn and Beryl Engineering and Inspections. And it all goes to a podcast, so you can check the whole thing out in its entirety. And today's topic is before the storm, like what you need to know about your policy before it's too late to actually run down and make that claim. So what say you, Pat? Like, are you listening, or are you just back there Netflixing? Any questions? You've been awful quiet.
No, you've covered it in great detail, but also I'm in college now, so I'm back here studying for my exam.
You are so full of it. What are you in college for? I don't believe it.
Tacos,
real estate. I'm in real estate school.
Oh, you're taking real estate? Wonderful.
Yeah.
How great would that be to have Pat as an agent on our team?
That would be awesome.
I'm going to buy your agency.
Oh, you are?
Oh, yeah.
You can't afford me, Pat. He's not listening. I'm telling you, he was watching Netflix.
No, I did. I promised somebody in South Florida in Lee County. You ever heard of a place called Miramar Bay?
I have.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. We all have.
That is supposed to be one heck of a community.
Oh, you'd fit right in there.
Oh, I don't know. When the home started $800,000, and they got some crystal lagoon down there. Pretty much. Speaking of that, when's the one that's going to open around here?
We're tracking with it. We're following them. We've been talking to their media people about having a big, you know what? We might do a remote broadcast maybe when they open. We'll see. We're thinking about it.
That'd be cool.
But when the Crystal Lagoon finally opens, that would be super cool.
Yeah, well, I guess this has been around a while, and it's a well-liked community down there, and it was voted number 1 2 or 3 years in a row for the best community to live in. And I hung around with all these realtors, but there was not a Keller Williams down there.
Oh,
there's definitely an office there, and there's a Keller Williams presence in that neighborhood for sure.
Yeah, they were not down in that area as far as that.
Pat, you're thinking small. It's not a Keller Williams. It's a Katrina Madewell.
Oh, yeah. That's right.
Not a KW, a KM.
Oh, there you go.
Well played, Leo.
Yeah, when are you going to have your own brokerage?
I could if I wanted to. I'm a broker, but I choose not to, really. I choose to be under the KW umbrella. It's an excellent brand. And, we'll talk about this more, I'm sure, next year, but we're going to see some major changes roll into our industry even next year. We're seeing some changes now already in the shift, and we're going to start to see more and more. Like, I will tell you that some of the things that Gary Keller is working on behind the scenes is so profound. Like, so profound. Like, one of the things they're doing is this app called Kelly, of course, right? Kelly. And Kelly is going to be able to answer a lot of real estate stuff. And they have this thing called Market Snapshot. And so she's getting better. She started out like a 2-year-old. Now she's more like a 5-year-old. So they're trying to train her to be smarter and smarter and smarter. And eventually the plan is to get her through college. But essentially, like, you could snap your zip code. We'll do it with you guys after we leave. Or if you can call me on my offer number and I'll do it for you. But it's super cool.
What's the number?
It's 813-377-2775. Again, 813-377-2775. So if you go snap, and it's going to eventually be like down to the address. But if you snap your zip code, it's going to show you local market stats, active, pending, sold, like better than the junk you see on, the other sites.
Let me ask you this question, Leo or Katrina, you might know. My next door neighbor had a visit from the Hillsborough County, I guess, home inspection, but they never came to the front door. They just pulled up in front of the property because she re-stuccoed her entire house.
Without a permit?
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Oh.
Yeah, it's code enforcement.
Oh, that's Leo.
Oh.
Ping, you're answering that one.
Yeah, so code enforcement. The county actually does flyovers, and if they see changes to your house in a flyover, they'll send code enforcement out to hit you with fees.
But just to re-stucco?
Oh, yeah, stuccos. I'm sure you can talk about this. We have a lot of cases that involve improperly placed stucco.
Well, and that's another probably whole show.
That's what I'm thinking.
But what I will tell you, too, that brings me to a couple other points I'd like to make about before the storm, what you need to do, in addition to checking for additional living expenses and or loss of use.
Wait, how many pages back are you looking for that, roughly?
It could be anywhere. I would just scan. It'll have a heading that says either additional living expenses or loss of use.
Okay.
But the other thing you need to make sure you have is law and ordinance coverage, because in case you need to make code upgrades, or anything like that, you want to make sure that you have law and ordinance coverage.
Is that a
so
Dick
please
Wolf
look for that.
TV show, Law and Order? Law and
I
Ordinance?
think so.
So literally, you're telling me that if you have to make a change, and Leo, you're a perfect candidate, right? You live in a 1920s home. I'm sure there's some stuff that's not up to code, but if you had a loss and you didn't have this coverage, they wouldn't pay to bring it up to code?
Gotta have that coverage. Gotta have that coverage. You might be able to get away with
So what happens
enough.
if they say you can't put that old whatever? Like, this is pretty extreme, but if you had NAMID tube, I'm sure you don't. You can't reinstall that.
Florida Building Code. Here's my transfer numbers. Florida Building Code's existing building code 608. If you on the electrical, if you're replacing more than 25% of the electrical, like your panel fries out, you have to upgrade the whole house. And every component's that way. So we use Florida Building Code, Existing Building Code, Chapter 7 and 6, a lot of times to argue law and ordinance, saying that, well, this one section of the roof is damaged, but it's 25% of the roof. We need a whole new roof.
And I see that a lot. In fact, that's coming through on a lot of our engineering reports. Also, folks, when you fill out your application for insurance, make sure you tell the truth. I can't tell you how many times I've seen denials based on some kind of screw up in the application. So make sure if you're signing
what do you
your
think that,
application-
like, for what exactly? What's an example?
Didn't have a dog when they had a dog, had a tax, said they didn't have a tax lien when they have a tax lien, had a prior loss or a pending loss when they obtained the insurance coverage, no sinkhole cracks, and then they come back and make a sinkhole claim. Make sure you're truthful on your application and get with your agents, people. I can't tell you how important that is. Want to make sure I threw that in. Picture documentation. If an adjuster does not come out to your home right away after the storm, take your own pictures. I would highly recommend, it sounds bizarre and not intuitive, I would highly recommend snapping a few photos of your house just to have a pre-loss condition documentation of that.
Excellent point.
So those are just some things. Again, keep track of your paperwork, your policy, keep your agent's number in your pocket or on your cell phone. I can't tell you how important these things are because these are the types of things that cause insured's problems on a daily basis.
So that sound means it's time for a real estate tip of the day. And so the tip of the day launching right into this particular topic is do an annual review on your homeowner's policy. Take some of the pieces of the things we've talked about in this show. And if you're getting in and out of the car, please download the podcast, check out the video so that you can get all the specifics of everything we talked about and what to look for so that when you do that annual review, or even now is a great time to call your agent and make sure that you have the coverage we're talking about. Because once a storm gets what they call in the box, meaning too close to us, you can't make any changes.
Cone of concern.
Very true.
You can't find coverage. You can't do any of that stuff. So make sure that you're covered. And that's the purpose of today's show, Before the Storm. I'm your host, Katrina Madewell. Leo Cannyn joining us today, and Aaron Dunavant with Merlin Law Group. You guys did a bang-up job, as always. Thanks for being my guest again.
Thank you for having us.
And remember, you can get us at our off-air number at 813-377-2775. We'll hook you up with Leo or Aaron. Just don't ask for a date. 813-377-2775. You can call or text us at that number. And remember, love where you live, or I'm going to fix it. Even if it's after a storm, we'll help you find another one. Welcome home.